From the video store on the ocean floor, it's Dread Diver Radio. On today's episode, we'll take a question from the mailbag and talk about the hate and disgust catapulted at the slasher genre by critics in the early 80s. I'll break down the new trailer for Clown in a Cornfield from Tucker and Dale director Eli Craig, and I'll pick a few horror headlines to go over. So, all of you wonderful sickos out there, drop an anchor and stay a while. Here we go. Episode 2, I never thought we'd make it. I'd just really like to thank my team, my publicist, I'm just kidding. I have no team or friends. But I do have a shitload of fun horror-themed content to cover today, including a deep dive breakdown of the trailer for the upcoming Clown in a Cornfield. Let's just jump right into it. So this is coming to us from RLJE Films and Shudder, at least according to the logos at the beginning. I try not to get too into the weeds going over the corporate entities behind these movies, because I think no one really gives a flying hoo-ha, so let's just jump to the next credit.
It's time to sweeten the day with the marvel of Bay Pen brand corn syrup. That's right, a little drop of Bay Pen makes everything better. Just take it from Friendo.
From the director of Tucker and Dale vs. Evil, Eli Craig. All right, now you've got my attention. Tucker and Dale is pretty much universally beloved by horror fans, except for those psychos that don't like horror comedy. And I'm definitely one of those fans myself. It does such a good job of balancing tone while also delivering a frenetic, gory, and hilarious ride with two main characters that perfectly walk the line between caricatures and relatable, recognizable human beings. Also, again, it's just so damn funny.
I should have known that if a guy like me talked to a girl like you, somebody'd end up dead.
The last feature directing credit for Craig was Little Evil in 2017, so it's been a while. We see a small Midwestern town and a parade on Main Street. A radio announcer is talking about Bay Pen brand corn syrup. And wouldn't you know it, their mascot is a festive gent named Friendo the Clown. He even has his own giant effigy mounted to a parade float. Cut to nighttime and a few young people are at a barn party or something when someone in a clown costume appears in the cornfield. Some goofball says,
"Hey, check it out, it's Friendo!"
and then immediately gets an arrow through the face. 24 seconds in and we already know what kind of movie this is going to be. Unlike trailers for a lot of A24 movies, where I can watch the whole trailer 3 times and then go to the theater, sit through the 2-hour running time, and I still don't know what the hell kind of movie it is. But I'm getting off track. So next we see some quick cuts of Friendo doing stuff. He appears on a video on someone's phone. Looks like he's spotting someone doing bench presses in a garage. I don't know about that guy's form. His back is a little high. You gotta control your arch, dude. Amateur. Friendo chases some kids around with a chainsaw. Someone gets speared near a scarecrow. And there's a fun little moment involving 3 girls covering each other's mouths to keep quiet, which you really need to see to get. Then it ends with this little tag, which isn't that creative, but is effective.
Never with Friendo.
If you don't know, Clown in a Cornfield was a novel written by Adam Caesar and originally published in 2020, his first in the young adult category. It won something called the Bram Stoker Award for Best YA Novel. I don't know what that is, because the last book I read was a Tijuana Bible I found in a Texaco Station trash bin near Tucumcari, New Mexico back in 1983. But it sounds prestigious. Good for you, Adam. According to my sources, the book centers on a teenage girl, Quinn Maybrook, who is a senior in high school and recently moved to a small town called Kettle Springs, Missouri. This is not a real town. I should know. I've driven the length of Missouri at least 411 times, and I've never heard of it. But from the description, it does sound authentic to the region. Corn, parades, teenagers, murderous clown mascots. I've seen it all. I mean, creepy-ass clowns are really part and parcel of the whole Midwest experience. In Plainview, Nebraska, I once stopped at a clown museum that focused specifically on dolls that also happened to be clowns. Clown dolls. No shit. That's a real place. So Kettle Springs has fallen on hard times since the Bay Pen corn syrup factory closed and was burned down by a local boy. And then there's a parade and everyone gets horribly murdered. Didn't see that coming. Anyway, the movie stars Kevin Durand, who is probably best known for his role as Reed in 2007's Who's Your Monkey? But also, apparently, he was in Abigail, Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, and Big Mama's House 2. The only other name I recognize on the cast list is Will Sasso as the sheriff. I'll always remember him as the overgrown man-child Hank from 1999's Drop Dead Gorgeous. His character was special. The book has 2 sequels, so maybe they're hoping for a franchise here. Do we need another clown franchise? Sure, why not? I guess we'll see. Are you guys excited to check this one out? Let me know in the comments. Okay, we're adding a new feature this episode, the Dread Diver Mailbag. That's where you send me letters of inquiry, and then I use that as a springboard to go off on overly long-winded rants about whatever wacky thoughts I have at the moment. Sound like fun? Let's get into it. Today we have a letter from someone calling themselves Baghead Jason's One Eye Hole. I mean, of all the holes you could name yourself after. Anyway, already sounds pretty crazy, but let's take a look. Here we go. Dear Mr. Diver, longtime listener, first-time caller. I love your video from about a year ago about Gene Siskel and Betsy Palmer, and I wanted to pick your brain, as it were, about Siskel and his equally dim-witted partner Robert Ebert. Whoa, already coming out strong with the vitriol. In a special episode of their show, Sneak Previews, both critics profess a disdain for what they call women in danger films, citing slashers like Friday the 13th, Prom Night, and Terror Train, and non-slashers, Hotel Hell, they must mean Motel Hell, and I Spit on Your Grave alike. I wanted to hear your thoughts on how 2 men, both well-regarded critics with a popular television program, can be so blatantly hypocritical and idiotic when comparing the 2 classic slashers, Halloween and Friday the 13th. Their loose, ill-conceived definition of women in danger films is movies that have a lot of teenage girls being assaulted in a special way, or stabbed to death, usually both, with the killer most often being a man who is sexually frustrated with these women. One of the films they use no less than 3 clips from to prove this point is Friday the 13th. Moreover, they consider Halloween to be directed and acted with a great deal more artistry and craftsmanship than Friday the 13th and the other sleaze bucket movies they've been talking about. However, Halloween contains even more of the stereotypes that Siskel and Ebert claim to dislike Friday the 13th and other films for. For example, the idea that the killer is always a man. In Halloween, the killer is Michael Myers, who has no cause or reason to his killings other than being purely and simply evil, as Dr. Loomis puts it. And Friday the 13th, the killer is not only a woman, but also has a motive. She's a mother who's been driven mad because neglectful camp counselors caused the death of her disabled son. One should also take into consideration the kill counts and how they're distributed in terms of gender. While Ebert claims that these films are exploiting the plight of women in danger, it can actually be shown that many of these movies they mention, Terror Train and I Spit on Your Grave, to name a few, have a much higher male body count than female. In fact, in both of these examples, men are the specific targets of the killer. In Friday the 13th, the number of male deaths is equal to that of females. And the numbers are only even if you count Pamela's death, meaning that she kills more men than women. In Halloween, more women are killed by Michael than men. Another note about these deaths is that Siskel and Ebert protest the scantily clad way the women are often dressed in these films. They call Friday the 13th yet another film connecting sexuality with violence. This again is a severe inconsistency of standards. In Halloween, there is not only an instance of full breast nudity in a sexual context, but the very first victim of the film is completely naked following implied coitus when Michael kills her. There is another case to be considered, which is that of the final girl archetype, which directly challenges Siskel and Ebert's claim that one thing these so-called women in danger films all have in common is that they portray women as helpless victims. In Friday the 13th, Alice is the lead female character who ends up single-handedly taking down the killer and escaping with her life. Halloween has Laurie Strode, who fights valiantly against Michael Myers, but ultimately requires help from the male Dr. Loomis in order to defeat him. Mr. Diver, my question to you is this. Okay, now we're getting to it. How could two people who have dedicated their entire careers to film and cinema lack media literacy to such an egregious degree? How could these two men, who speak with such authority and conviction, be such hypocritical assholes that blatantly lie to their audience for the sake of furthering their point? Why were they able to retain this platform and program while saying things so mind-numbingly stupid that it seems as though they never even watched the films of which they discuss? Have a good night at Camp Blood. Baghead Jason's one eye hole. Okay. Well, there's a lot to cover here, but I'm not going to. Siskel and Ebert were uptight dickwads. Good night. Just kidding. Let's start at the beginning. I did a short video on my YouTube channel covering the topic of Gene Siskel, essentially doxing actress Betsy Palmer and intentionally ruining the ending of Friday the 13th in his written review back in early 2024. I'll put a link in the description if you want to go check it out, but here's a quick snippet. Gene Siskel called Sean Cunningham one of the most despicable creatures to ever infest the movie business, and armed with his claims of woman hatred perpetrated by the makers of the film, decided that the best course of action to punish those responsible in the name of women everywhere was to publicly shame actress Betsy Palmer for taking part in the film. In his view, she was a good girl who played nice roles. How dare she take part in this trash? So, in his article for the Chicago Tribune, he published her hometown of Rowayton, Connecticut, and encouraged people to write her nasty letters to express their disapproval in her choices and to scold her for taking part in the film. He really did that. Not only is that an asshole move, but who the hell gets their panties in a wad that bad over Friday the 13th? Not exactly the most offensive film in the horror pantheon. But Mr. or Mrs. Eyehole brings up a good point here. How do you laud Halloween but despise Friday the 13th? Especially on the grounds that these two critics put forward in their television broadcast. Now, I'm happy to hear an argument that Halloween is more artfully crafted. I might even agree. But as far as the other criteria are concerned, in the episode of Sneak Previews that we're discussing, Gene Siskel opens his lecture by saying this.
Now, normally on Sneak Previews, Roger and I review new movies. This week, however, we're going to be looking at a group of recent films that have some very ugly things in common. All of these films are thrillers featuring extreme violence directed at young women. To put it bluntly, what you see in most of these films is a lot of teenage girls being raped or stabbed to death, usually both. This is a depressing development in American movies, and on this show, we'll examine the nature of this trend and then speculate on why we're getting so many of these films and getting them now. A lot of moviegoers, adults and teenagers, both go to see these R-rated films and they assume, well, they're just going to see a bunch of routine, scary pictures. But oftentimes, they're really shocked how awful these films are. As we explore this trend, we will not be showing you extreme violence in these movies. We've picked scenes that only suggest the violence. We want to inform you, not offend you.
Then they show a clip from When a Stranger Calls. Have you guys seen When a Stranger Calls? It would most likely get a PG-13 rating today, and the only people killed are 2 children off-screen and the stalker who is taken down by Charles Durning like so many before him. Now, it's true that a young woman is threatened in the movie, but let's just take a moment to list a few other movies where a young woman is menaced or threatened by a malicious killer for the sake of dramatic storytelling. Are you ready? Silence of the Lambs, Psycho, Night of the Hunter, The Shining, Peeping Tom, The Terminator, etc., etc. Gene Siskel is doing here what so many film critics before or since seem to do. They project. He's projecting his own hang-ups and baseless presuppositions about the movie without bothering to notice what actually happens in the actual story. In most early slasher movies, more men are killed than women. They both keep repeating the idea that only women are the victims in these movies. Bullshit. They also completely fail to mention that in almost all of these films, a woman is responsible for vanquishing the killer with the exception of Halloween. Laurie Strode does fight for her life, but it's Dr. Loomis that ultimately barges in and blasts Michael out the window with his revolver. And Friday the 13th, it's Alice who has to pick up an axe and ultimately save her own life. They also talk about scenes of women hiding and cowering, with knives brandished in their faces. You mean sort of like the scene where Laurie hides whimpering in a closet in Halloween? Wait a minute. Are film critics full of shit? Is that why people stopped paying attention to them decades ago? No, couldn't be. Let's look at a few other films Gene Siskel gave lukewarm or negative reviews to. Poltergeist, Scarface, Beverly Hills Cop, The Terminator, Aliens, Predator, Unforgiven. Yeah, all garbage, obviously. What a clown. Speaking of clowns, the teaser for Clown in a Cornfield dropped recently. And wait. We already did that. Never mind. What's next? Oh yeah, horror headlines. Real quick before we get into that. Did you guys know that I create all the music for my podcast and my YouTube channel? I mean, unless you hate it, in which case some other asshole did it. But if you like it, stay tuned because I'm going to play a fun little track from an upcoming album that I'm putting together. Some of you have asked when I'm going to do a Patreon or something. I've been dragging my feet because I wasn't sure there were enough hours in the day to create enough extra content for subscribers to get value out of a subscription. But I've been putting some overtime in lately. I mean, what was I going to do? Socialize with friends? And in the next few months, I'm planning to offer something in this realm that I think you all might dig. Anyway, keep your eyes peeled for that full announcement. And please drop a comment and let me know what kind of stuff you might like to see. In the meantime, here's a tune I cooked up. It's not quite polished or finished, but it's kind of fun, and it's intended to take you back to the days of drive-ins, trashy exploitation movies, and crappy concession stand food. So here we go. Roll the tape.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, time for the show.
This place looks like it was decorated by Charlie Manson.
There is a killer out there.
Oh, come on, Michelle.
I can't take it anymore.
You are wrong. You're crazy.
Yeah, what?
crazy.
I gotta tell you both, kids, drugs are not the answer.
Shut up and listen, I'm not through yet.
Make sure you're in a real comfortable position, huh?
And another bloody killer. Sex, drugs, and rock and roll.
And they'll take you one by one and no one will hear you scream.
The worst possible thing is happening.
He's come back.
Go ahead, have your fun. Cow shit.
What'd you call me?
I called you cow shit.
When are you going to realize that the whole world isn't made of psychopaths?
Oh, I gotta tell you, I love this film.
This motion picture is a vicious expose of a part of the young generation.
I am a creep.
That sick generation who must ravage and plunder for their kicks.
Well, I guess it's time to sell the house.
Things to eat and drink to top off your evening. Want a suggestion? Your favorite cigarettes.
Would you mind telling me what's going on around here?
I shouldn't have told you about that.
To heighten the horror, shock your senses, kill your brain. It could only be shown at midnight.
We'll make an announcement before the stand closes to give you plenty of time to get that last-minute treat.
So, horror headlines. Here's something interesting. Eli Roth starts the horror section, which he calls a brand new independent studio from an iconic horror filmmaker. This looks like he's dipping into crowdfunding for his next film or his next slate of films. He's got a campaign on Republic, and the basic pitch is this. Join legendary horror filmmaker Eli Roth, the mastermind behind Hostel, Cabin Fever, The Green Inferno, and Thanksgiving, in launching his brand new horror studio. As an investor, you'll own shares of the company plus a piece of the profits from Eli Roth's new films. This is your chance to build a horror empire straight from the twisted mind of a genre legend. I'll leave it up to you, lovely listeners, to decide if Eli Roth is a genre legend. He's definitely made a lot of movies, and he lists his various accomplishments here with some bullet points. Creator of top horror films such as Hostel, Cabin Fever, Thanksgiving. Award-winning actor from Inglourious Bastards and The Idol. Director of 10 films with $474 million in box office revenue. Theatrical distribution partnership with Iconic Events, who did Terrifier 3. Shares in the company plus 10% of net profits from films for 5 years. Perks include merchandise, special screenings, credits, and cameo roles. And then he's got this little section that says Manifesto. I'm ready to make the kind of hardcore horror films that fans want without big studio interference. Well, I mean, that could be promising. I've been saying for a long time, and not just me, that the Hollywood model is changing pretty rapidly. And I think that the studios are starting to become kind of obsolete, as it seems to be the case that a lot of what they make isn't profitable. And how long can you do that? The streaming services came along and everyone thought that was the next big thing, but a lot of them are faltering or just kind of plateauing. So this kind of makes sense to me. I think the industry, the entertainment industry as a whole is going to decentralize and, looking for funding directly from the fans, probably not a bad idea. I know it's been going on for a long time in various ways, but this seems a little bit different. It kind of seems like Eli Roth is planning to make this, or at least try to make this how he gets movies made in the future. And if it works, good for him. Give him more, it would probably give him more freedom, probably allow him to keep more of the money. And he's looking to kind of perhaps share some of that with people who want to invest. So I don't think it's a bad thing. I guess it remains to be seen how successful this is. But if you're interested, you can go check it out. I'm just to be clear, I'm not shilling for this or anything. I just thought it was an interesting little news tidbit. But if you are interested, it looks like you can go to republic.com/horror section and read the rest of what they're trying to accomplish here. And I guess we'll see. I mean, the guy has made some successful movies, and I know some people are big fans, and I like some of what he's done, so I think this could be a cool thing. But what do you think? Let me know in the comments. I'm going to wrap this episode up here because I've got some work to do to get my next YouTube video out. And, this shit takes time. So look for that. Go to my YouTube channel, Dread Diver. I'm going to have a video coming up about Maniac Cop, sort of a deep dive. I've got one coming up about Freddy versus Jason, which digs into the production and everything that led up to that movie, including all the different writers and different scripts that they went through over the course of, like a decade. And I'm going to put together a Final Destination timeline video that includes the new movie. So that's partially done, and when the new flick comes out, I'm going to cover how that fits into the overall timeline, because it looks like that could be kind of interesting with some flashbacks and other things that they're introducing. So, go to YouTube, check it out. Thanks for listening. Dread Diver out.